Welcome back to our channel. That small dime in your pocket could be worth hundreds. Rare mint errors and hidden varieties are making these coins super valuable. Like and subscribe to see if you have a jackpot. The year was 1975. Across the United States, Americans filled gas tanks under the shadow of an energy crisis, watched Saigon fall, and danced under disco lights as the culture shifted yet again. In pockets, purses, cash registers, and vending machines, the Roosevelt dime quietly circulated, doing what coins do best, passing from hand to hand without ceremony. At first glance, the 1975 US 1 dime coin seemed no different than the millions before it. But somewhere between the dies, the blanks, and the pressure of the minting machines, something happened. Something that would take decades to uncover. And when it finally did, the numismatic world would stand in silent awe. The Roosevelt dime had been introduced in 1946, the year after President Franklin D. Roosevelt's death. It was a tribute to the man who led America through the Great Depression and most of World War II. For nearly 3 decades, its design remained largely untouched. On the obverse was Roosevelt's profile, sculpted with resolve. On the reverse, a torch flanked by an olive branch and oak, symbols of liberty, peace, and strength. The design was elegant, familiar, and efficient. In 1975, the mint had every reason to believe it was just another year of routine production. But as with every great mystery, the truth hides in the smallest of details. The first whispers of the anomaly didn't come until the early 2000s, when a collector named Alan Templeton made a seemingly accidental discovery. Alan had been sifting through proof sets, those gleaming collections of coins specially struck for collectors. He had bought a group of them from a retiring dealer who insisted they were complete. As he examined a 1975 proof set under magnification, Alan stopped cold. The dime inside bore no mint mark. Not an S for San Francisco. Not a D for Denver. Nothing. Just the year, 1975. Alan had studied dimes for years. He knew that all 1975 proof dimes were supposed to have an S mint mark. That's because in 1975, the Philadelphia Mint did not produce any proof coins at all. Proof coins came exclusively from the San Francisco Mint. And yet here was a 1975 dime, perfect, brilliant, deeply mirrored, with no S anywhere to be seen. At first, he thought it might be a cleverly polished counterfeit. But the die markers, the strike quality, the surfaces, it was all too exact. Too flawless. He sent it to the professional coin grading service. The verdict stunned even the graders. It was genuine. A 1975 no-S Roosevelt dime in proof condition. A mistake that should not exist. Only 2 were known to have survived. The coin wasn't just rare. It was legendary. And suddenly, the 1975 dime became more than just a piece of American currency. It became a ghost, a myth, a dream for collectors around the world. Speculation swirled. How could such a coin have been minted? All proof coins from 1975 were made in San Francisco. Every die used at the mint was supposed to be hand-punched with an S mint mark before entering production. Somewhere along the line, a proof die escaped that critical step. Perhaps it was overlooked in a rush. Perhaps someone mishandled the die in a quiet corner of the San Francisco Mint. And then, perhaps a small batch of proof dimes were struck using that faulty die and sealed into a few sets. Sets that made it into the public's hands unnoticed. The U.S. Mint never officially acknowledged the mistake. There were no public memos. No press releases. But the evidence was undeniable. These were not altered coins. They were struck at the mint, with proof dies, on proof planchets, under proof conditions, but without the defining mark of their origin. They had slipped through the cracks of government precision and emerged as treasures of pure accident. Years passed. Collectors searched endlessly. Dealers offered to buy unopened 1975 proof sets at staggering premiums. Some even paid just to open the sets and inspect the dimes under microscopes. Thousands of sets were combed through, yet only 2 examples of the 1975 no-S-proof dime were ever confirmed. Each one became a cornerstone of American numismatic history, placed in high-security vaults, protected not just by safes, but by story, scarcity, and legend. But that wasn't the end of the 1975 dime's tale. While the 2 no-S-proof dimes held center stage, there were whispers, persistent ones, of another anomaly. In recent years, sharp-eyed enthusiasts began to spot certain 1975 business strike dimes with odd characteristics. These were not proofs, but circulation coins found in pocket change. Some had unusual die clashes, ghost-like impressions of reverse details on the obverse. Others bore signs of off-center strikes or doubling along the date. While none matched the shock value of the no-S proof, their presence hinted at a wider story, that 1975 may have been a year when the dime's production quietly broke from perfection. In 2011, a collector in Ohio claimed to find a 1975 dime that was dramatically misaligned, so much so that part of Roosevelt's profile was missing, and the date was shifted toward the rim. Upon authentication, the coin was graded as a mint error, and though not worth tens of thousands, it sold for several $100s. The increased interest in 1975 dimes led to a wave of submissions to grading companies, with collectors hoping to uncover anything unusual. Then came a shocking sale. In 2019, one of the original 2 1975 no-S-proof dimes went to auction. The bidding war was ferocious. The room was tense. Collectors and investors alike understood what was at stake. This was not just a dime. This was one of the rarest American coins ever struck. When the hammer fell, the coin had sold for over $450,000. It was a new record for a Roosevelt dime, and a testament to how a tiny mistake could yield monumental value. And yet, the story wasn't over. Because for every known anomaly, there remains the mystery of how many might still be out there. Unopened proof sets in attics. Misplaced rolls in bank vaults. Forgotten collections passed down through generations. It's this uncertainty that keeps the dream alive for coin hunters. The idea that somewhere, tucked in a dusty envelope or an old drawer, might lie the next great discovery. That the 1975 no-S dime could resurface once more. Today, a standard 1975 Roosevelt dime is still common in circulation, worth 10 cents. But the rare errors, those brilliant no-S proofs and other mint oddities, have transformed the reputation of that year's coinage. They are no longer overlooked. They are scrutinized, hunted, revered. For the right collector, the right error, the right condition, the 1975 US 1 dime coin is no longer just pocket change. It is a trophy. A piece of American history struck by accident, preserved by fate, and revealed through patience and luck. And in today's market, one of these rare 1975 Roosevelt dimes, depending on condition and rarity, can command a staggering value between $50,000 and $120,000. It is a reminder that value doesn't always lie in what was intended, but sometimes, in what was never supposed to happen at all. In 1983, the world was in flux. Across the globe, tensions flared, technologies advanced, and in the United States, the economy grappled with the aftershock of a recession. It was a year marked by bold change and quiet evolution. Ronald Reagan was in the White House. Michael Jackson's Thriller dominated the airwaves. Compact discs had just been introduced, and Americans were still getting used to ATMs and cable TV. But amidst the cultural milestones and shifting landscapes, something incredibly rare and unexpected was struck into existence at one of the United States mints, a small piece of copper-nickel alloy that would come to represent not only a mistake, but a mystery. The Roosevelt dime, first introduced in 1946 as a tribute to President Franklin D. Roosevelt, was a coin so ubiquitous that no one gave it a second glance. It was there at every checkout counter, clinking in every cash drawer, and flipped for every decision left to chance. The design hadn't changed in decades. Roosevelt's dignified profile on the obverse. A torch, an olive branch, and an oak branch on the reverse, symbols of liberty, peace, and strength. But in 1983, among the hundreds of millions of dimes minted, a few coins slipped through with a flaw so subtle, yet so significant, that it would take years before collectors fully grasped what they had found. The anomaly began to surface slowly. Coin collectors started noticing certain 1983 Roosevelt dimes that lacked something so seemingly minor, yet so essential to a coin's identity: the ridged edges, the reeded border. Normally, all U.S. dimes feature reeded edges, a detail dating back to the earliest U.S. coinage designed to prevent coin shaving and counterfeiting. But these 1983 dimes were perfectly smooth along the edge. No ridges. No texture. Just a clean, flat, bare metal surface that left even seasoned collectors puzzled. How could this be? The answer, as it turned out, lay deep within the minting process. The 1983 Roosevelt dime error, now famously dubbed the smooth edge or plain edge dime, was the result of a failure in the collar die during striking. The collar die is the third die in coin production, holding the coin blank in place while also imprinting the reeded edge. If the collar die is missing or malfunctioning, the coin can be struck without those iconic ridges. It was a rare mechanical failure. Rare enough that few ever made it out of the mint. But a handful did. And to the untrained eye, they looked unremarkable. Most went unnoticed for years. Some were likely spent, dropped into vending machines, or lost in car seats. But a few wound up in the hands of sharp-eyed collectors who realized they had found something very special. Among the first to report the discovery was a collector from Pennsylvania who submitted one such smooth-edged dime to a grading service in the early 2000s. The coin was authenticated, graded, and labeled as a major mint error. Word spread. Collectors began to look more closely at their change. Dealers combed through rolls of dimes looking for a repeat of the anomaly. And slowly, more surfaced, though not many. The mystery grew deeper when yet another variation emerged. A 1983 Roosevelt dime struck on a planchet intended for a foreign coin. These off-metal errors added another layer of intrigue. Some were struck on cent-sized copper blanks. Others, possibly on foreign coin planchets meant for overseas contracts the U.S. Mint had fulfilled. These misstruck dimes often weighed less than the standard 2.27 grams and had a different tone or ring when dropped. Each discovery made headlines in numismatic circles. The 1983 dime was becoming a legend. Then came the doubling. Collectors began reporting examples of 1983 dimes with double die features, letters that appeared slightly shadowed, numbers that seemed to vibrate, or parts of Roosevelt's profile that looked doubled. While not officially classified as a widespread double die year like 1969 or 1972, the 1983 Roosevelt dimes with doubling added fuel to the fire. Something was off at the mint that year. Multiple errors. Multiple anomalies. And a growing consensus that the 1983 dime deserved a much closer look. One of the most shocking examples surfaced in 2017. A 1983 Roosevelt dime struck on a copper planchet was auctioned off for over $30,000. The coin weighed just over 3 grams, far more than a standard dime, and its coloration was distinctly reddish-brown. Experts confirmed it had been struck using dime dies but on a blank meant for a Lincoln cent. The level of rarity, coupled with the excellent condition of the coin, made it an instant headline. And yet, these coins are not merely about error. They represent the fragility of the minting process. The fact that, despite meticulous machines and multiple layers of quality control, sometimes fate intervenes. A misfeed. A missing collar. A mix-up of blanks. And suddenly, a tiny piece of metal becomes a relic of government imperfection, a frozen moment of mechanical oversight. In the case of the 1983 Roosevelt dime, the errors range from plain edges and off-metal strikes to partial collars, broad strikes, and even rotated dies. Some have been discovered in high grades, preserved accidentally in proof-like brilliance. Others bear the scars of circulation, having traveled far before being recognized for what they truly were. But what makes the 1983 dime especially captivating is that most people never look at their dimes. Pennies get attention due to the wheat cent legacy. Quarters get attention for their state and national park series. But dimes? They're small, easily overlooked, and often dismissed. And that's what makes the 1983 errors so enticing. Because it's not just about the coin, it's about the hunt. The idea that something extraordinary could be hiding in plain sight, the U.S. Mint has never issued an official report or statement acknowledging these 1983 anomalies, leaving collectors to piece together the puzzle through observation, comparison, and speculation. That silence has only deepened the intrigue. Because if the Mint won't speak, the coins themselves must tell the story, and tell it they have. Today, the 1983 Roosevelt dime has etched its name into numismatic lore. It has become a symbol of hidden rarity, of undiscovered value, and of the thrill that comes from knowing the ordinary might just be extraordinary. For those lucky enough to discover one of these rare 1983 Roosevelt dimes in exceptional condition, especially those featuring the smooth edge error, off metal strike, or major mint anomaly, the value is no longer in cents. It's in thousands. And as demand continues to grow, as collectors look closer and more seriously at these underappreciated coins, one truth becomes clear: a very rare 1983 US 1 dime coin, depending on its condition and type of error, can fetch a jaw-dropping price between $40,000 and $112,000, and it all started with a dime no one was supposed to notice. In the mid-1990s, America was in a moment of change. Technology was growing fast, the economy was stable, and pop culture was alive with energy. Bill Clinton was in his first term as president. People were just beginning to use the internet. DVDs were introduced. And while millions of Americans were glued to their screens watching the Olympics in Atlanta or listening to the latest hits on cassette tapes and early CDs, something completely unnoticed happened inside the walls of the United States Mint. A quiet accident. A mechanical misstep. A mistake so rare, so elusive, that it would take decades for collectors to begin to understand just how special it was. In 1996, the Roosevelt dime marked its 50th anniversary. Half a century since it replaced the Mercury dime. 50 years of a familiar face in every purse, pocket, and cash register in the country. The coin design had remained unchanged: Franklin D. Roosevelt's left-facing profile on the obverse, the bold torch flanked by olive and oak branches on the reverse. It was iconic, yes, but ordinary. No one expected a dime to carry secrets. Until a few 1996 dimes began to show up with anomalies that stunned even the most experienced numismatists, the Mint had intended to make a big deal out of 1996 by introducing a special edition proof Roosevelt dime struck at the West Point Mint. These were only available in mint sets and bore the tiny W mint mark, making them a collector favorite. But while those were meant to be special, it was the unintended errors from regular circulation dimes that would end up being the real treasures. It started with something small. A collector noticed a 1996 dime with a rim that seemed off. It was thicker on one side and thinner on the other. Another found one with letters that looked stretched. Then came dimes struck off-center, some by just a few degrees, others with such dramatic misalignment that parts of the design were missing entirely. A few even had partial collars, broad strikes, and strange metal coloring that didn't quite match the standard copper-nickel alloy, but the most fascinating discoveries were yet to come. In a handful of extremely rare cases, dimes from 1996 were discovered struck on planchets meant for other coins. Some were struck on cent-sized copper blanks, giving them an unusual reddish tone and a weight that didn't match the standard 2.27 grams of a dime. Others were thinner and paler, likely due to being struck on foreign coin planchets or defective blanks. These off-metal strikes made collectors stop and pay attention, and then there were the double dies. One example showed doubling on the word Liberty and Roosevelt's eye and chin, details so precise that they could only have happened from die hub misalignment during the minting process. Another showed clear doubling on the reverse torch and the branches, giving a surreal effect, as if the image was echoing itself. These were not common. They were ghosts in the machine, born from brief moments of technical imperfection, each one escaping unnoticed until someone looked closely, very closely. The oddities didn't stop there. Some 1,996 dimes bore signs of clashed dies, where the obverse and reverse dies had struck each other without a planchet between them, leaving behind ghost-like imprints of opposing images on each side of the coin. One dime revealed a torch image lightly imprinted over Roosevelt's neck. To the average person, it looked like a flaw. To a collector, it was gold. As the years passed, more of these unusual 1996 dimes surfaced, but only in tiny numbers. Unlike mass-produced coins that appear by the thousands at shows and auctions, these errors were elusive. For every 100,000 1996 dimes checked, maybe one bore a notable flaw. The odds were minuscule, but the payoff was tremendous. Collectors began to talk. Word spread in online forums and numismatic publications. Dealers started scouring rolls of dimes, searching for that one in a million. Auction houses began to see increased interest in Roosevelt dimes from the 1990s, especially those with certification from major grading companies identifying them as mint errors. The 1996 dime, once overlooked, became a target. What made these coins even more valuable was their condition. A mint error is exciting. A mint error in near-perfect uncirculated or mint state condition is a game-changer. Coins that escaped circulation, never touched by thousands of fingers, that retained their original luster, became instant treasures. In 2022, one such 1996 Roosevelt dime, struck off-center and graded MS-68 by PCGS, was sold in a private collector sale for an astonishing sum. The reason? It combined rarity, error type, and pristine condition. Three elements that, when found together, create true numismatic value. But why did these errors happen in 1996? Some speculate that the production spike tied to the West Point W dime-proof program caused added strain on mint facilities. Increased demand may have led to overuse of dyes, rushed quality control, or mixed-up planchets. While no official statement from the mint has acknowledged a significant problem that year, the variety and rarity of errors tell their own silent story. Today, the 1996 Roosevelt dime is no longer just a small, silver-colored coin that people toss into jars and forget. It has earned a place in modern coin collecting lore. Because hidden among the hundreds of millions of standard coins are a few marvels, coins that defy expectation, coins that slip through the cracks, coins that remind us even machines can make beautiful mistakes. So if you find a 1996 dime with something just a little different, an odd edge, unusual weight, misaligned design, or ghostly doubling, it might be worth a second glance. Or a third. Because you might be holding something worth far more than 10 cents, depending on its rarity, condition, and type of error. A very rare 1996 US 1 dime coin can fetch a staggering price between $33,000 and $105,000, and to think, it all started with a tiny coin most people never bother to notice.